there, this is Sarah Kuhn. If you are an INFJ or in a relationship with an INFJ or related to an INFJ in any way, and you want to figure out how they operate, what makes them tick, and how to communicate with them better, this is the show for you. It's called The Quiet Ones. This is a show that deconstructs INFJs, what they are, how they think, how they feel, how they operate, and how they relate to people with other personality types. Whether you have just found out that you're an INFJ or have known for a number of years, there is something for everyone. You will learn more about your personality type so that you understand who you are and understand how you operate in the workplace, in relationships, in your family, and with friends. I want you to walk away from every episode feeling like you have a place of belonging, feeling like you are no longer alone, feeling like you have a place to be heard and seen and understood as you really are. This is a place to connect with other INFJs, to learn and grow and really thrive. I want to give you inspiration and real-life strategies that are going to help you figure out how to live your best life every single day. Though INFJs are very rare, you are not alone in this world. You are not the only one who thinks the way that you do and feels the way that you do. Hear from real INFJs just like you. Before we get started, just a quick word from our sponsors. Thank you to Darren, Kate, and Rachel Ann for becoming Patreon sponsors. We really appreciate your support and hope that you enjoyed the Patreon sponsor exclusive podcast episode for November called An INFJ Learning to Say No. In this episode, we discussed why it's so important for INFJs to say no, the best way to start saying no, and how to set healthy boundaries. You can help support the Quiet Ones podcast too and get access to exclusive podcast episodes, blog posts, and more when you become a Patreon sponsor for just $5 a month. Sign up today at patreon.com/INFJwoman. Find the link in the show notes. I also want to tell you about the Growth Mindset Group. The Growth Membership Group is a membership for INFJs that helps you overcome the things that challenge INFJs the most. Learn about the INFJ personality type, how to make mindset shifts, working through your emotions, and connecting with your most authentic self. We're going to dive into self-love quite a bit this month and give you some practical solutions for all of these things. The program includes 2 monthly group coaching calls with me, Sarah Kuhn, the INFJ woman, access to a private Facebook community of INFJs who are looking to grow just like you, and exclusive videos to help you continue to learn and grow. Take advantage of the founding member price of $25 a month. The price will go up to $50 a month in January. As a bonus, I'm offering a free masterclass on how to find your purpose for anyone who signs up before December 1st. So don't wait, sign up today. You can find all of the information at infjwoman.com. There's also a link in the show notes. Hi there, Sarah Kuhn here. Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Ones. I did something this week that was really fun. A lot of people ask me, how do you know for sure that you're an INFJ? So I created a short quiz to help you find out. It's really short and sweet, but it gets you thinking about how you like to spend your time and how you make decisions too. So if you have a minute, try it out and let me know what you think. There's a link for it in the show notes, and you can also find it at the bottom of my blog posts on my website, infjwoman.com. There's also a link for it on Instagram in my bio, and there's a post about it on Facebook too. So it's kind of everywhere. So if you can't find it, send me a direct message on Instagram and I'll send you a link for it. But check it out. Let me know what you think. In this episode, we're going to talk to a lady who I absolutely adore. Her name is Lavi. She's from England. I really had a great conversation with her about traveling, and we talked about INFJs finding their purpose, and we talked a little bit about culture shock, and then she gave us some advice on how to travel if that's something that you want to do as well. Before we get to that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that I was doing this week. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. It's called Don't Keep Your Day Job, and it's hosted by a lady named Kathy Heller. She was talking to Evan Carmichael about belief. And he said that the most important thing that you can do in your life is believe. That's like his catchphrase. That's on all of his marketing material. I think he teaches courses too. But one of his big thing is about believing in yourself. You want to have more confidence? You have to start with believing that you already have it. you want to start a business or go back to school or get a new job or move to a new place or lose weight or whatever it is that you want to do, you have to start with belief. You have to believe in yourself. Believe that you can do it. Believe that you will get the thing that you want and that you deserve it. That's the hard part for me. I believe that I'll get the thing that I want, but believing that I deserve it is like this whole nother step that I've been learning a lot about recently, that it's definitely challenging. It's something that's really challenging me. But Evan says the next thing that you have to do is start living that life. Don't wait for the motivation. Don't wait until you feel like you have the perfect plan and that everything is all set and all figured out, because if you keep waiting, you're never going to get there. Just do it. Do it messy, do it scared and not perfect, but just show up. All of the biggest things that I've done in my life have been like that. I had a dream and about half a plan, and I just went for it. I moved to North Carolina from Kansas, so halfway across the country, almost 10 years ago, and it was really kind of sketchy, honestly. I just basically threw everything that I owned in my car and printed directions from Google Maps because I didn't have a turn-by-turn GPS at that time. So I had this printed out page of Google Maps, which I think I still have somewhere, and I just took off. I had all of $300 to my name, but somehow I made it work. And I only got lost one time on that trip. I got lost in Memphis, and I thought, oh no, this is like the end of the world. But thankfully I was able to find my way, and it didn't take too long for me to find my way back to the highway and find the right exit. But yeah, I drove 19 hours and only got lost once. That's not too bad, right? But it was the same when I started my INFJ Woman Instagram account and my blog. I had no idea what it was or what it would become. And honestly, that's still something that I'm in the process of figuring out, because I think that over time it kind of changes and shifts as I make changes and as we make connections. The thing is, I just started it and I just went with it. And it's the same for this podcast. I watched a masterclass that Kathy Hellard offered because I pre-ordered her book. She was offering 3 masterclasses for free for everyone who pre-ordered the book. And I was actually interested in a different class. But the podcast class came up and I was bored one day, so I listened to it. And I started thinking, hey, maybe I could do that. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. I had no idea how to do a podcast, how to record it, where to post it, how to edit it, or anything, but I just started. And I'm still learning a lot. It's still messy and imperfect. I've even had to re-record some episodes, including the interview that you're going to hear today. It's a learning process, but it's fun too. It's a challenge of doing something new and learning a whole new thing, and it's fun. The first episode I recorded took me forever to record. I didn't think it was going to get recorded. I sat down and I had to psych myself up for a few hours before I even hit record. I was so terrified of messing up or saying the wrong thing, and I was even more terrified of listening to myself talk, because I hate that. I hate watching videos of myself. I hate listening to the audio. And it took me 3 hours to record it and another 5 hours to edit it. And I was terrified, but I did it anyway. I showed up and I put it out there, and so many people have said such wonderful and amazing things about it, and I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate you listening to this and providing feedback. It means so much to me. But most of all, I'm so excited to find people that need to hear the things that I have needed to hear so many times. Everything that I share with you on my blog, on my Instagram account, and in this podcast, it's stuff that I need to hear. It's stuff that when I found it, it touched me, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. It's stuff that is important to me that I'm learning about, and that because it means so much to me, I feel like it could help you as well. And if you're thinking about starting a blog or an Instagram account or a podcast, I just want to tell you that there's somebody out there that needs to hear your story. They need to hear what you have to say, what your experience is, and what you've learned. I promise you they do need to hear it. And there's somebody out there that's just waiting for you to write it or to speak it. Okay, so let's get to our interview. So like I said, today we're talking to Lavi. She is an amazing lady who's from England, and she's traveled all over the world. I met her through my Instagram account, INFJ Woman, and I was so excited to get to know her and to hear all about her travels. Today we're talking to Lavi. She is an entrepreneur and has a YouTube channel about lifestyle and traveling. Lavi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So you are an INFJ.
Yes.
How did you discover that you were an INFJ?
So my first discovery of it was when I was in China, in Beijing. So I was hosting and I organized an event for people to get together and socialize while de-stressing through coloring mandala pictures. And it was just through talking that two of the girls were trying to guess my personality type. And they were guessing on the INFJ type or the INFP, I think, type. And I was quite curious, so I decided to do the Myers-Briggs test in that space of time. And it came back as an INFJ, an INFJ, can never say it properly. So when I discovered that, I actually read through it, and a lot of it related to how I am as a person. And it kind of made it apparent of why I do the things I do. Actually has an answer, if you like, to why I do the things I do, because sometimes I'd be confused as to why do I do these things compared to other people. It's a bit different to everyone else. So yeah, they questioned it because they were wondering why someone would decide to, start an event for other people to help other people socialize and meet each other. And they were saying maybe they thought I was an INFJ, and they were correct in that manner. So yeah, that's how I found out. And that was only last year.
Awesome. It's so awesome when other people can pick out your personality type too. And I think it's super helpful, actually. My niece actually helped me determine my personality type because I was mistyped as an INTJ for a while, for several years. But it was nice to have somebody else to be able to help me sort it through.
Yeah, so have someone bounce off you as well to say, I do these things because X, Y, and Z. And for someone else to say, yeah, I can see why you do that, was much more of a nice refresher, if you like, for someone else to see it as a good thing rather than a bad thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, I feel like as INFJs, we grow up feeling like we're misunderstood. And it's just this huge revelation when you realize, oh, this is the way that I'm supposed to be. Like I was made this way on purpose and everything now makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were talking on Instagram. That's how we found each other. And you like to travel. Can you tell me about some of the places that you've been?
Oh, it's been a few places because since working in China, I had the opportunity to be able to travel around Southeast Asia. So I've been to Thailand, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Bali, and Vietnam. There's some other ones, but I can't remember everything. Oh, Singapore was my highlight one.
And you don't actually just travel, but you've lived in China for a while too.
Yeah, I lived in China for 3 years. So I only just came back to England this summer. So I'm still trying to find my feet because as some people are aware, when you travel somewhere, you live there for quite a long time and it's not your home country. And once you then go back to your home country, you get what they call reverse culture shock. So sometimes you might see something, for example, on the TV in your national home, and it's in your currency. For example, like KFC were advertising a chicken bucket for like £15.99 in the UK. And to me, coming back from China, it was actually quite cheaper. And as soon as I saw the advert, I was like, oh, in Mandarin, Tai Guela, which means too expensive. So I was still thinking in Mandarin and also thinking more of it as a local Beijinger rather than, wait a minute, I'm back home.
Right.
This is what things cost now. So yeah, it takes a while to get back into the routine of things. But once you have that secure unit of having your friends and family around you who know you, basically are there to help you talk about it and move forward and not dwell on why am I back and like what am I doing with myself and stuff. The whole had a lot of anxiety issues in coming back and not knowing where I fitted in and stuff, but being able to be open with my close-knit friends. I literally have the friends I can count on my hand. They're like my sisters or brothers, you know, from another mother.
Right.
So they're people I can confide in about stuff. So without having them, I don't think I would be that much sane coming back.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that there was as much anxiety about going over there as there was about coming back?
No, that was actually my third time going to China. So I'd been twice before, but each time was a shorter term that I was there. So the first time was like 2-3 weeks. The second time was 2 months. And then the last time was 3 years. So I think I kind of helped space it out and knew what I was going into. And also I didn't have any expectations of what I think it should be. I just went in there with a clear head and thought, okay, this is what's going to happen. Well, let's roll with it, basically. And yeah, it kind of worked out in the end. I think towards the end, I was working as a teacher and I realized that's not my career path. Right. As an INFJ, for me, teaching was okay. It had its limits to a point where I loved that I was helping, you know, the children to, you know, reach some kind of ability to then push forward and choose their own career paths. But after a while, I just thought, this isn't for me. This is not what I want to do until like I'm 65 or something. So yeah, just thought it was time to come home and continue with my business.
Yeah. So you were there for 3 years the last time. What was it like adjusting to the culture there?
I'm not going to lie, it was hard. It was hard, especially when I was there. I was actually with my ex-boyfriend who was Chinese at the time. And then halfway through the second year, we broke up. So with me being there with him at the first hurdle, it was great because it was easier to integrate and talk to the locals because I was also practicing my Mandarin with him at home as well as with my colleagues in the school. So then I was much more flexible and happy to then go out and not worry about everyone staring at me and stuff. It was more like I was able to then communicate with them. But after a while, the staring for me got a bit too much because, you know, as a person of colour, I stuck out like a sore thumb in Beijing. So it was full of people from other parts of the country, especially the rural areas, who have never seen a person of colour in their lives and maybe only instances on TV. So a lot of issues regarding, you know, people staring. And in the Western culture, if you stare at someone for too long, it's considered impolite. But in China, it's not. Sometimes staring at someone is actually considered You don't stare at someone actually in Chinese culture. You're not supposed to look into their eyes when you're talking to someone, which is kind of a contradiction. Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction when they're staring you dead in the eye, and even if you blink or smile, there's no cracking of it. So that was interesting to find out that piece of history, cultural history, and then it not actually correlate in person. But it would correlate in conversation. Like you would have a conversation, but there was no eye contact, which is basically a polite way of talking to someone. But that wouldn't happen in Western culture. So that one was a bit of a, what do I do in this situation? Otherwise, I just kind of dealt with it and moved on. But sometimes when you're not in a good mood, as an INFJ, sometimes you don't want to even go outside. So I would then just stay indoors and, catch up on movies that I've missed. So.
Right. Was there any interesting places that you got to see? Any historical type of places, or any place that you went sightseeing that was really interesting?
Oh, I think, basically China was like the top of the list because there's so many different things to see and do. And it's, a walking monument really in itself. One of the highlights of being in China is that you can go from north to south, and it's completely different way of living in the south compared to the north. And even in the south, you can go down to the beach area and chill out with some coconuts, eat a mango. But then going back to the north, you need to wear a coat, It's two different, two different places, two different types of conversations that you would have, and completely different sceneries as well. So there's always something to see and do in China. But if I was to put the top of the list, I would say Singapore was a highlight for me, and also Vietnam. I say Singapore because it was very multicultural, and it was similar to what I'm used to in my hometown of Leeds in the UK. It's very multicultural. Everyone's friendly. Everyone gets on with each other, and you can go to different restaurants and try different cuisines as well. So I think that was a highlight for me at that point in time, because I was missing home at the same time. And to top it off, they also had a Nando's. So if anyone knows, like, Nando's is like a really good restaurant in England.
That's so funny that you say that, because I spent 3 months in England about 10 or 11 years ago. And one of the biggest things for me that made me miss home was the food. And I had some time to spend in London by myself, which I was super excited about, because I was looking for places to eat that were familiar, and I found a Pizza Hut, and I was so excited. At that point, I had been in England for about a month and a half, and that was like the first familiar type of food that I ate. And when I came home, everybody was asking me, like, what did you get to eat? And I'm like, I ate at Pizza Hut because that was familiar. That was what I wanted.
Yeah, and then you get the stares of like, what? You went all the way abroad just for pizza.
Right.
But yeah, people miss like the whole like idea of like it wasn't just pizza, it was like a memory of like home and stuff, especially when you're in that situation where you're kind of stuck, like you're in a bit of a rut in your mind, so you needed that little outlet, if you like, because there was like Pizza Hut and all the Western food places in China. And for me, Pizza Hut in China tasted completely different to the one in England, for me personally. Really? It was much more gourmet pizza, and it wasn't as greasy as the one in my hometown. So yeah, that could be addictive. But otherwise, they didn't have a Nando's. They had a knockoff version of Nando's, which was called something completely different. But there was only one, and I never got the chance to go there. But I guess I didn't, have to go far to go to Singapore instead. So I was happy.
Yeah, it's amazing how we just cling to those things that are familiar. But I mean, for the most part, I absolutely loved being in a different country, though, seeing so many new things all the time, and all of the history, and just soaking up all the culture, except for the food. But I'm very particular about what I eat anyway. So.
Yeah, same. Very particular.
So do you have any advice for other INFJs who want to travel, especially if they want to go someplace where they don't speak the language?
I'd say very much so to go there without an expectation. Don't expect to go there and think, oh, I'm going to find a McDonald's straight away.
Right.
You have to go there and be able to open yourself up to different experiences, different culture, and also regarding the language, it is good to have some kind of knowledge of even survival language, like your basics, like hello, or where's the toilet, or where's the bus station, just basic language in that country, so at least you can get around. Because as well, if you're taking a taxi, for example, in China, and it's not a registered one, sometimes you can get those moonlight taxis, and sometimes you can get a proper taxi, but they could be like a moonlight driver in there. So if they feel like you're completely fresh off the boat, if you like, there's more of a chance that they're going to rip you off. But if you can speak the language, even a tiny amount, they're less likely to rip you off. So that's more of a way to combat any issues regarding survival modes in another country. I'd also say, in regards to when I mentioned about not expecting or have an expectation, I mean that by sometimes you might go somewhere, I think, like, for example, I went to Thailand and I was like, oh, it's going to be sunny all week. Yay. I'll just lay on the beach. No, it wasn't. There's going to be rain. It's going to be, a situation where your plans are completely ruined. You've just got to try and deal with it in that matter of time, and, have a backup plan as well. So I think definitely be organized as well as you can be, have a backup plan, make sure you have a little survival app on your phone with the language to help you get around. Also, make sure you know exactly how much you need to spend. Do your research is very, very important before you decide to up and leave your country for another country and find out you're in the middle of a war or something. Like Hong Kong right now. Right. So you wouldn't go, oh, I'm going to go to Hong Kong for 2 weeks, like next week. I would advise not to.
Right. Yes.
So it's just little things like that, really. It's the little things that make a difference, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So out of all of those places that you were talking about before that you've been, what's your favorite place to travel to?
I'd say it's a toss-up between Japan and South Korea. But then all of the places I have been to have their own highlights within themselves. So, for example, like Japan was amazing because of the food and also the shopping experience, but also the culture as well regarding how to make matcha tea and how to make sushi by hand and the process that goes into that, and also seeing Mount Fuji up close. And with South Korea, the people are really lovely, also very beautiful in person, both men and women. It's like walking into a catwalk sometimes. But also there's a lot of sightseeing to do in South Korea, and also the food is really good as well. That's that. I think all of the places, the food is really good.
Right.
But yeah, I think because those two are the places I've been to twice before. So I've been to the north and the south. Well, not in Korea, but
Right.
in South Korea, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, those two are the ones that I would definitely go back to and visit again and again.
Yeah. So you have a YouTube channel. How did you start that?
Oh yeah, so that actually began because of encouragement from my ex-boyfriend at the time while I was in China, because I was talking with him about wanting to document my time while I was abroad. Because anytime I would go back home, I would be asked, oh, how was this? How was that? What did you do? And I'd completely forget. Or I'd tell him the story, and in my head, it's like amazing. But when it comes out loud, it's like, oh, was that it? It was like, oh, wow, okay. So I decided to document it on YouTube because at the time when I just left when my nephew was about 1, 2, and I've just come back and he's 5 now. So it was also to help him see what auntie's doing abroad, also from like my mum and my friends as well. And then it was kind of like people would ask me questions of like, how did you get into teaching? What made you go to China? And I just thought, oh, it'd be helpful to answer those questions people also have as well. So it was kind of, all around of helping people, answering those questions, and also documenting my time, so people my family and friends could physically see what I was doing instead of me having to tell them this lame story when to me actually sounds amazing, but I'm just not telling the story right,
Yeah.
So that's how it started, and then it kind of escalated to me also hosting and event planning different events while in China, but also I did singles nights as well, which was a boost to the relationship status at the time for people in China. And so I just began from there really in relation to helping people, but also creating a time capsule for myself. So that's how it began.
That's awesome. I love that. I love doing like scrapbooks, and I love pictures. And one of my favorite things on Facebook is their memories, where you can go back and look at stuff that you've posted on the same day. And sometimes it's like super embarrassing. Like, what was I thinking? Other times it's just like, oh, I forgot about that. That's so cool. But yeah, I really wish that I would have had the opportunity to video some things when I was in England. I think I took like my dad's digital camera back then because I barely had a cell phone that had a camera on it.
Oh, no.
It's funny now, my camera or my cell phone now will take like professional style videos, but yes, I love the documenting thing. And I think sometimes we don't really think about YouTube that way, but it would definitely be really helpful as far as documenting that kind of stuff and being able to show people video rather than just trying to tell them about it. I'm sure that's really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Because as well, people are actually stimulated through visuals as well as like conversations like through podcasts as well. But sometimes, when you're telling someone a story face to face, time is an element. So sometimes I'm looking at their watch like, okay, I'm waiting to eat something. Or can I get another vodka and tonic?
Right.
It's always like a distraction somewhere. So the focus is then lost on what was being said. So I think definitely recording things like that for memory purposes is a good way to hold that little keepsake, if you like.
Sure. So do you have any fear of being on camera, or did you when you started?
No, actually, because I started out in performing arts, and it was when I was I was going back through this because we had to do a timeline in one of my modules for university, and it was about 3 to 5. I actually had a speech impediment, so I wouldn't actually talk to anyone in like nursery and growing up in school and stuff. And it wasn't until going to primary halfway through that I began talking, and it was through attending like choir and also drama class as well through the school, and extra like curricular activities that blossomed me into this creature I am today. So I've not really had any issues of being on camera because I've always done theatre and drama from an early age, and also being a cast member for the National Youth Theatre that's down in London, and also being an extra in parts of TV shows in England. So yeah, it kind of just started from there, but I've never really utilised my drama theatre background because then I stopped when I attended university. I then went into business. Yeah. So being able to have that encouragement at the time from my ex-boyfriend, who also bought the camera, and, you know, advised me it's better to invest in a MacBook rather than using my old HP laptop, which didn't have the editing software that I needed at the time anyway. Right. Helped to, push that along. And being on camera, I think, is it's like having a friend. It's basically like talking to a friend who's a robot, you know. Yes. You just put your camera on a tripod and, you know, give your camera a name, which I don't have because I always forget names. Like if I had a pet or more than 2 pets, I'd probably forget what I called them. So I tend not to give things names. But if that suits you, then you can talk to your camera as though you're talking to a friend. So that helps to ease you into it, you know.
Yes, I love that idea of thinking of it as just one person, because I think that where a lot of fear comes in is when you start thinking about all the people that could see the video. And so you see it as, you know, maybe you're talking to 100 people or 1,000 people. But if you really just think about it like you're talking to one person who's your friend, then it's a lot different. It's a lot less intimidating.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think to add to that, with the business course that I did in my undergrad, we had to do a lot of like presenting PowerPoint presentations. Mm-hmm. So it also comes from that as well. And I know some people do get like stage fright of talking to thousands or even 5 people, and learning those techniques of just like, you know, focusing on a mark on a wall somewhere instead of like looking dead straight in someone's eye can like completely throw you off. Yeah. So just like learning little techniques that help you to ease you into presenting, but then pave a way for you to go into recording yourself on camera.
Yeah, for sure. So I saw on your Instagram a couple of days ago that you have branched out into another business as well now that you're back home.
Oh, yeah. I need to set up a separate one for that, but, you know, time and stuff. Yeah, well, before I left for China, I actually was in the idea process of setting this up. So what I'm trying to do is open a tea room in my hometown, because it isn't anything like it in my head that I want to then develop into a tea room, basically. So the name is Circle of Leaf. So it's a play on, you know, the Lion King. Right. Yeah, I was, you know, serenaded with the whole Circle of Life musical yesterday, with the adaptation. So it's all about my experience of being in China and being, you know, a herbal tea drinker, and then coming back home and not seeing anything what is in my mind available in my hometown. So at the minute, I'm just marketing and researching and getting people's feedback on how they feel about my teas, and also what they would like to see, and what their idea of a tea room would be like to enjoy in my hometown. So a lot of the feedback has been very positive, and I did start that before I left for China, and I did come back during like Christmas and summer to do a pop-up stall here and there. And now coming back fully, the market hasn't really changed. There is still a huge interest in it. Mm-hmm. So now my result is, okay, now I need to push forward and find a retail property to then open the business. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. That sounds like such a great idea as well. I was listening to a podcast just this past week where it was Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's an amazing writer, and his podcast is called Revisionist History. And he does like research on things, and it's like you learn one version of history, but then you don't actually learn the truth most of the time, because somewhere it usually gets switched along the way. And one of the things that he was talking about is that England is famous for tea, and English people drink lots of tea. So people just assume that tea comes from England, but all of the tea that English people drink actually comes from China. That's where all the good tea is. All of it comes from China.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't actually know that, which is one of the highlights I want to point out, is that the tea that I serve is actually all from China. And I'd like to also incorporate the traditional Chinese medicine as well into my business. But a lot of people are like, oh, I only drink English breakfast tea. I'm like, well, actually, that's black tea from China, but then, it's been taken from the roots of it and then mutilated and turned into PG tips. So what you're actually drinking isn't what it should really taste like. And when you kind of, as an INFJ, you break it down quite bluntly.
Right.
That sometimes it doesn't come across very well. So have to work on that. But
right.
Some people asking for chai tea, and I was saying it's not Chinese, that's Indian, because it's spice tea.
Right.
And I was like, I'm sorry, Chinese tea, I don't have Indian tea. So I'm like, oh, okay. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing though that you want to do the education around it as well, and being able to teach people where it comes from and what the traditional way to enjoy it is as well. That sounds like a whole experience. That's not just like going to Starbucks and buying a coffee. That's a whole experience when you sit down in the restaurant, and it sounds really amazing, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking forward to do, like offer customers an experience, but in the same time, I'd like to offer like a social enterprise as well. But I'm still looking into which one is best suitable for the business to open up like a social enterprise alongside the business. But I feel like what's missing in most of these businesses in these day and ages is education, and a lot of it is like, well, what am I drinking, what am I eating? Yeah, I guess it's a challenge, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, for sure. All right, so tell us where we can find you.
Oh, okay, so you can find me in England. So I do have Instagram, which is OoohLavi, so OOHLAV for Victor, OoohLavi, and also on Facebook. My business is on there, Circle of Leaf, as well as OoohLavi again on Facebook, and YouTube under OoohLavi again, where I document my time and my travels, and also some hair and skin stuff that I've picked up along the way. Yeah.
I hope you guys got as much from Lavi as I did. She is so inspiring and such an amazing lady. You can find the links to connect with her in the show notes. Okay, so we're going to do a segment that we call Ask Sarah. Our question this week comes from Kelly, and she says, "Hi, Sarah. First, thank you for your wonderful podcast. I'm so happy I found it, and there are many things that speak to me as an INFJ woman. I now understand that I am not weird. This is just my personality. I have a question for the Ask Sarah segment, and I was wondering if you can help me find the answer. One of my biggest challenges as an INFJ has been making new friends in a new location. I first experienced it as a freshman in college. I went to a school where I didn't know anyone. However, in college, it was easier. The nature of the proximity to my peers all day, every day, led to eventual friendships. Now, as an older adult that has moved to a new region of the country several hundred miles from my hometown, where I do not know anyone, I find myself lonely. I had 5 very close friends in the area I'm from, and as an INFJ, those friendships were deep, loyal ones. And I have found it difficult to find people that I click with here. I frequently feel like an outsider in a group of people that I do not know very well, and that seem to have much different personality types, which I have read is pretty typical for an INFJ. My husband is a different personality type and doesn't understand why I hold back and just can't be myself with everyone that I meet. He feels that is detrimental and friendships are missing from my life here, which is true. While I can be funny and laid back with those I feel close to, I find that very hard to do with people I have just met. I can't help it as much as I try and can't seem to change that about myself. I feel like I'm caught in a quandary. I would love to make new close friends here, but it's hard to open up and extremely hard for an introvert to say to a relatively new person, "Can I get your number? Would you like to go out for coffee or lunch?" Do you have any suggestions that would be comfortable for an INFJ to try? Thank you so much, and thanks for your excellent work on your podcast. You have helped me to finally discover that I'm actually okay and that many of these feelings are completely normal for an INFJ, even if they may not be for the rest of the world. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm so glad that my podcast is helping you. I know firsthand that making friends is extremely hard. I have moved to a different part of the United States several times, and every time it's like I have to start over completely. So here's my advice. I've always had problems making friends, even when I was in school. But now that I'm older, just like you said, it's even harder. My mom used to tell me to join some kind of a group or take a class or something, and I totally discounted her advice. I just thought it was completely silly. I learned a couple of years ago I was totally wrong and she was completely right. So here's my example. I love this boy band music group. It's called New Kids on the Block. I love them so much that I started going to events that they have and concerts and meet and greets and just different things that they have where there's a bunch of people that get together. It's fun to meet the guys, but in the process, you spend a lot of time waiting and a lot of time around other people. So I was forced to interact with some of these people. But it's actually a good thing because I have met some wonderful, amazing people at these events. People that I never would have come across if it hadn't been for those events. So I'm passing on the same advice to you. I'm not saying that you have to be in love with a boy band or go to concerts or meet and greets, but find something that you like, something that you really like, maybe that you love, and find a way to connect with other people who like that one thing. The reason that it's easier to connect with these people is you know that everybody is there for one reason, so you have something to talk about to begin with. And that's the hardest part for me, is coming up with the first thing to say. But when you're all there for one reason, you have something to start with, to start your conversation with, and then you can move on to different things and find out that maybe you have other things in common as well. So the second part is force yourself to reach out to somebody every once in a while. There was a podcast that I was listening to, and they were asking for stories, kind of like what I do. And then a few months later, they were holding an event that was close to me. And I really wanted to go, but I was also scared at the same time. But I pushed through the fear and I went all by myself. But I ended up meeting some amazing ladies who were there all alone as well. It was really scary, but it's also good to push through that fear from time to time and try something new. Reach out to somebody and see what happens. The next thing is, don't discount your Facebook friends. I have a few friends on Facebook who live in different places that I rarely see. In fact, some of them I've never met. In the past, I wouldn't really have counted them as friends, but I think about them differently now. They are still friends. In fact, some of them are my best friends. They are only a text message or a phone call away, and with Facebook doing phone calls and videos these days, they feel a lot closer. I'm not a fan of video calling, but from time to time, I will video chat with my mom or my niece for different reasons. It helps a lot to see their faces. I don't know why, but it really does. So the next thing is, ask new people if they're on social media. One great way that I have found to connect with people is through social media. It feels so much easier to ask someone if they're on Facebook or Instagram than it does to ask for their phone number. So when you meet someone in person and you feel like you want to ask them to have coffee or something, start by asking, are you on Facebook or are you on Instagram? Usually you'll be able to find each other right away and connect. And like I said, it feels so much less threatening to ask somebody, are you on Facebook, rather than asking them, hey, can I have your phone number? I've done this several times, and very rarely do people say no. I have had a couple of people say, oh, I don't use Facebook or social media, and then launch into this whole thing about how bad it is. If you still want to connect with them, then I would ask for their phone number instead. If I don't, I just leave it there with something like, oh, that's too bad, no worries. Sometimes I find it difficult to connect with people who aren't on social media, honestly, because a lot of my life revolves around social media now. And I start a lot of conversations with, hey, I saw this thing on Facebook, or hey, let me send you this thing on Instagram. So when they're not on any social media platform, then it's like, oh, I don't even know if we have anything in common, honestly. One last thing that I wanted to tell you as well. Please remember that your husband has a different personality type than you do. My guess is that he's an extrovert and he doesn't have a problem picking up the phone or walking up to somebody and starting a conversation. He doesn't understand what it's like to feel the way that you do. And there is nothing wrong with you. All INFJs hold back their personalities when they're around new people that they don't know. You aren't doing anything wrong by doing that. It's not comfortable for you to open up to people you don't know, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to change anything about yourself for anyone, including your husband. Let me say that again. You shouldn't have to change anything about yourself for anyone, including your husband, your mother, your boss, your pastor, your friend, anyone. It is possible to make friends while still being true to yourself and your personality. It just takes a little bit more time than it takes him. And that's perfectly fine for an INFJ. When you're true to yourself and you be yourself around the people that you're around, you're going to attract the right kind of people to you. If you change your personality to suit the people that you're around, they're not going to be the right friends. So I would encourage you to be true to yourself. I really hope that this helps you. And thank you again for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you have a question that you would like to have answered, please send it to me at podcast@infjwoman.com, or you can send me a direct message on Instagram @infjwoman. I always respond to all of my messages. So I got another question this week and I wanted to share it with you, and I was hoping that you could help me out with some of your stories to answer this question. It's from Brandy in Ontario, Canada, and she says, I would be interested to know how other INFJ women get along in romantic relationships. I am 44 years old and have been through multiple relationships now. While the other personalities haven't always been the same, there are repeating patterns in how the relationships end. No fight, no real wrongdoing, it's just not right and we walk away. I always come away from the relationship feeling like I am not right for anyone and should just be on my own. My need for connection, belonging, and love is so strong, though. Do other INFJ women feel like it will be impossible to find someone that will accept them for who they are, not call them complicated or too intense, or try to change them? Since I'm not very outgoing and social, I find it difficult to get out of the house and meet new people. So unless someone miraculously shows up at my door, how is that even going to happen? Any tips for finding a lasting relationship compatible with our unique personalities? Brandy, thank you so much for your question. I know exactly how you feel. I am almost 35 and in the same boat that you are. Dating is really hard, and finding someone who will accept you the way that you are is even harder. I have a small circle of friends that I stick to, and I really don't venture out very much either. So I want to pose a question to all of our listeners. Do you feel the same way? If you are married, where did you meet? And what personality type does your partner have? And do you think it's a good match, and why? I know there's a lot of information out there about ideal matches, but I'd really like to have some firsthand experience because I don't know that I really trust a lot of the information that's out there. I know that some of it is based on theory, and I think some of it is just copy and pasted. And I know that a lot of it really wasn't written by real INFJs because some of it is spot on and some of it is like, wow, that doesn't really make sense. That sounds like you just sort of thought it was a good idea, but you don't really know. But like I said, this is definitely something that I've struggled with as well. So Brandy, I'm right there with you. I grew up in a pretty small place. And initially I thought, well, maybe that's why there's nobody here because there just aren't a lot of people here. But I've lived in a couple of big cities as well, and I live very close to Boston now. So there are a lot of people here, but I just don't get out to meet any of them. I have tried dating apps before, and it's really just depressing, honestly. I've never found anyone on those apps that I actually would even consider going out with. So, yeah. Send me your stories about this. I would like to know what your experience is, and we'll read them next week. Any stories about dating, about how you met your husband or your significant other, we would love to hear them. And any advice that you have. If you felt like this and then met somebody, I would love to hear those stories too. Me and Brandy, we're looking for some hope here. So send us something good. And if you don't have any good stories, that's okay too. If all you have is sad stories, we'll read that too. Misery loves company, right? Again, you can send the stories to podcast@INFJwoman, or you can send me a direct message on Instagram or Facebook @INFJwoman. There's also a link in the show notes where you can submit the stories on the website, and there's also a list of other kinds of stories that we're looking for the next couple of months. Thank you so much for listening. You have no idea how much I appreciate you. We reached over 6,000 downloads in just 2 months, and I'm really blown away by all of your love and support. Thank you so much for that. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen at. It helps other people to find us as well. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.